Negative emotion, pain, loss aversion inspires urgency. It inspires action. Aggressive is, you need this right now. Come on, I won't take no for an answer. Assertive is, hey, I'm happy to take no for an answer. I just need a decision because I've got other people to talk to. We're always in pursuit of assertiveness as used in the sales conversation and trying to avoid aggression, because aggression rubs people the wrong way. Welcome, everyone, to the Close More Sales podcast. In today's episode, we are tackling one of the most crucial aspects of the sales process, of sales techniques, which is creating urgency. So whether you're dealing with a prospect who seems indifferent or you're trying to close a deal without coming across as too pushy, mastering the art of urgency can make all the difference in your success. We're going to dive into some of the most common questions that salespeople have around this topic, from how to tap into psychological triggers that encourage action to the phrases that naturally build urgency without alienating your prospect from wanting to engage with you. If you've ever struggled with getting someone you're talking to, someone you're selling, to see the importance of acting now rather than later, or you've wondered how to make urgency feel authentic and respectful, this episode is for you. I'll be answering some of the most pressing questions that we've been submitted about creating urgency, giving you the tools to close deals faster and more effectively. So whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned pro, hopefully these insights will help you with your approach. They'll help you refine getting your prospects to see the value in moving forward with you sooner rather than later. So, why listen to the show? What's the purpose of the show anyway? The purpose of this podcast is to empower sales professionals and entrepreneurs to push themselves to grow, achieve unimaginable success without burning out, and ultimately transform their lives. I'm Ian Ross, and I'm obsessed with all things sales, and I work with teams across the English-speaking world to make more money by asking better questions. The most proven path to achieving financial freedom is maximizing your earning potential, and a sales role is the lowest barrier with the highest possible ceiling for entry onto that path. Anyone can become a killer salesperson with the right techniques, mindset, and consistency. Everything we cover on this podcast is geared toward one thing: helping you close more sales so you can live the life that you want. If you'd like to get a sheet breaking down all the things to say in a follow-up call, text follow up, 2 words, to 33777. I will send you a template of exactly what to say on the phone completely for free, so you never have to say, I'm just following up or I'm just checking in ever again. So for this episode, in tackling the topic of creating urgency, I'll be doing it through the lens of some questions that were submitted, some of us from people who listen to the podcast, other ones the media team just thinks I should answer because I think they'll be valuable. So these questions, they cover a wide range, I'd say, of challenges. I haven't looked at them ahead of time, but I know I've been told that this is what they cover. They providing a sense of urgency to prospects, basically. So by addressing these, I hope I provide not only direct answers that you might be having right now and practical strategies that you can apply to your sales conversations today, but also how to think about some of your challenges, how to think about how to get through this going forward. Because though I definitely want this podcast to be as filled with highly actionable, direct, tactical advice as possible, sometimes an overemphasis on specific tactics can leave a gap in knowledge on understanding the context as to why to use that tactic in the first place, understanding why that tactic is valuable, and understanding how to apply a similar tactic or to choose not to apply that tactic to different scenarios. Understanding how to think about these challenges is equally as valuable, if not more so, than the techniques themselves. Because if you actually understand the context of the how and the why, it means that the what of what you say, you can always figure out regardless of the circumstance. So keep that in mind. Let's get into it now. The first question I have is, how can I create a sense of urgency without coming across as pushy or aggressive? The way to create a sense of urgency without coming across as pushy or aggressive is there are a few ways to do that, simply put, because depending on what it is you're selling and what you're doing, there might be some natural ways that emphasizing some aspect of urgency is natural. For instance, when I sold solar in people's homes across Illinois, one of the benefits of solar, certainly at that time and still currently for most of the country right now, had to do with tax incentives. The tax incentives are not going to be forever. They're to encourage people to do this now. And so if I'm trying to talk about someone wanting to do something now, talking about the natural reasons, the benefits that are inherently linked to the urgency is super valuable because one, I'm not lying. I'm not doing any tactics. I'm simply talking about what is actually going on. There's nothing else I need to do other than calling out the facts. So the prospect should not feel like, boy, why is he saying that? Why is he pushing me? Boy, he's coming off as aggressive. If I'm simply stating a fact that this tax benefit ends at the end of the year, you still got 2 months, but obviously we have to install it and you got to file it on your taxes. And so there's a chance that if we wait to take action on this, it might not be ready by the end of the 2 months. I've seen it happen. So just keep that in mind if the tax incentive is at all relevant for you. That's a very real thing to talk about in regard to something unique to the product. The other ways, if let's say you don't have anything like that, you're not selling a physical good, or there's nothing inherently built into your product or service that implies urgency is valuable. That comes from understanding how to ask questions about your prospect's motivation, about their pain points that whatever it is you sell solves in a way that emphasizes the negative aspect of not making a decision. If the idea of indecision, of not taking action, feels linked to a pain or a loss or missing out on a gain, that inherently creates urgency. Negative emotion, pain, loss aversion inspires urgency. It inspires action. So we've got all types of training on that, understanding how to ask the type of questions that gets your prospect verbalizing their pain points associated with inaction. That's the key. It will not come across as pushy, and it certainly won't be aggressive because we seek that through clarity. We differentiate between aggressive and assertive. Aggressive is, you need this right now. Come on, I won't take no for an answer. Assertive is, hey, I'm happy to take no for an answer. I just need a decision because I've got other people to talk to. That's the difference between aggressive and assertive. And we're always in pursuit of assertiveness as used in a sales conversation and trying to avoid aggression because aggression rubs people the wrong way. There's that question. The next question is, how can I make a prospect feel the urgency of their own needs or pain points? Well, that was just based on the last answer I gave. How can I make the prospect feel the urgency of their own needs or pain points? The language you use is incredibly important as a sales professional. What you say out loud is everything, right? That's all you kind of have. Now, most of sales is listening. Of course, it's not actually speaking. But once you embrace that fact, if you're speaking less than the prospect, which you should be in pursuit of, that also means what you say out loud is even more important than the normal stereotypical salesperson who's got the gift of the gab and just talks and talks and talks because you're saying even fewer words. So there's more weight behind them because there's fewer of them. So understanding how to use emotional language, specifically how to avoid intellectual language, which causes thinking it over, which is the opposite of the feeling of their own pain points that causes that urgency. What I mean by that is avoid questions like, what do you think? Do you think this will be helpful? What are your thoughts on this? Because if you ask the question, what do you think, implies that they need to think it over. And that's likely going to be the answer you will get. But if I ask, do you feel like this is going to be helpful for you? Do you feel like if you were to invest in something like this, it would solve this pain point and help you get in pursuit of this gain? I'm using feel-oriented questions rather than think-oriented questions because it aligns the prospect's answers with the right type of framing around the emotions that they need to feel to take action, not the thinking logical side of it. So that's a simple answer on how to get them to feel the urgency of their own needs and pain points. Ask feeling questions, not thinking questions. That's a really powerful point to actually understand. The next question is, what psychological triggers can I use to encourage a prospect to act now? What psychological triggers? Boy, that's a little bit of a loaded question, but it's, in a way, it's what we do. So loss aversion is a very powerful one. Another aspect of, well, simply put, motivation to take action can usually be classified as either gain or pain. I've talked about this before on the podcast, so go back and watch some previous episodes if you want more clarity on this. But if motivation is usually in pursuit of gain or the avoidance of pain, understand that the avoidance of pain causes more urgency than the seeking of gain. So all the triggers that you would want to be looking for towards acting now should be oriented around preventing or avoiding the negative consequences. And I talked about it a little bit earlier in just answering a different question. If you can effectively convey that inaction is its own decision, indecision is a decision, and that inaction can be linked to an aspect of pain, it, by the very nature of that, inspires action now. So look for ways to get them talking about the positive aspects if they were to move forward with your product or service, and then take it away. That feeling of taking away the hypothetical benefit through questions, again, don't just tell them, ask them. But if you can do that effectively, they will feel that loss and be likely to want to act now, to answer that question in a very short period of time. The next question here, how do I balance creating urgency with being respectful of the prospect's timeline? Very interesting question. I don't know necessarily if my goal is being respectful of the prospect's timeline as much as it is making sure I am respectful of the prospect themselves. I don't necessarily respect my prospect's timeline if I think that timeline does not serve them best as possible. So if they're trying to delay simply for the very nature of they're afraid to make a decision, or they're hesitant, or they feel like they want it, but they're just stuck in a rut, the timeline of let me think this over for 6 weeks is not something that I think is worthy of respect, because I know what I sell would help them now. And so it's actually my duty to not be respectful of their timeline. And in avoiding the respect of their timeline, I am actually being more respectful to the prospect as an individual. So that's my differentiation. So I don't care about your timeline as long as I am being respectful of you. If being respectful of you does actually involve something that does respect your timeline, that's a different point, in which case I can't create urgency, because by the very nature of your having timeline that justifies taking longer, there's nothing else to create it. But the long and short of it is, if you actually want to create urgency, you don't do it through telling. You do it through asking. That's how you persuade people anyway. So ask questions around hypothetical scenarios of what could go wrong if they wait. That's my broad advice there. But the nature of that question, I want to make sure I'm clear. My goal is not to be respectful of your timeline. It's to be respectful of you, the prospect. And whatever your timeline is almost irrelevant of that. Or it doesn't have to be directly tied to that. It's not irrelevant, but it doesn't necessarily mean I respect your timeline. That's a key distinction there. Next question. What are some effective phrases to use that naturally build urgency in a conversation? Variables in your closing question in relating to their pain. My favorite closing question of all time is, if we can take care of X, we can take care of Y, we can take care of Z. And those three variables are pain points that they have revealed to you are issues for them right now. If I can take care of X, I can take care of Y, and I can take care of Z. How should we prioritize this? That is one of the most effective ways to naturally build urgency. Over the course of a conversation, it was way too complicated a topic to give quickly advice here. But if you're thinking about what is one of the most effective ways to build urgency in a natural way, it's not simply memorizing one type of scripted sales line. It's understanding a format that includes variables that highlight what the prospect has already told you is important. Using their words back at them will always build more natural urgency than some whatever memorized line like, don't you want to take action today so you can save money because the sale's about to end? That will never be as effective as actually using their own pain points back at them and asking how they want to prioritize it. That's my answer to that question. How do I create urgency when the prospect seems indifferent or unmotivated? I don't even know if they are indifferent. I'm not even sure urgency is the goal. Because the first goal is interest, is motivation. And then there's urgency to do it now. So if I'm hearing indifference or motivation, I'm not trying to build urgency. I'm trying to pull away myself to get the dynamic of the conversation to shift so that they are selling me on why they want this or why they need this or why they would benefit. That's all. I'm always in pursuit of that anyway. We always say, like, we don't sell, we get people to sell themselves. That's our approach. And so if I'm sensing indifference or lack of motivation, urgency is not the goal. It's getting them to feel motivated and to show an interest. And then once there, then I can transition them to urgency. But I can't go from an indifferent person to an urgent need to fix that. There are steps along the way to build this out appropriately. Next question is, how can I leverage time-sensitive offers to motivate prospects to make a decision? Be honest is the simple thing. Be honest about a time-sensitive offer. So this might be outside of your control if you are an individual salesperson at a bigger company who's got no say over your offer. If you are a solopreneur or you're at a small business and you do have a say over it, make there be time-sensitive offers. It's okay if the offer repeats on another timeline. Right? I think how Alex Ramosi talked about this, I think, in $100 million offers of, like, he was constantly having like Labor Day sale, like 4th of July sale, back to school sale, finding ways to have a genuine time sensitive thing that has a real believable like ticking clock until it runs out, and you can just sort of restart it with a new offer. That's a business decision more than a sales decision. So keep that in mind if you have any sway over the way the offer is structured. Outside of it, if you're just a salesperson who's just doing it, just be honest with your prospect about the time-sensitive nature of the situation. Be honest, saying this sale ends in 2 weeks. If you want to, maybe there'll be another one. I'm never sure because I don't have any say in that, but I know this is done in 2 weeks. Be honest in that way. Next question. What role does scarcity play in creating urgency, and how can I use it effectively? Again, this is more of a business question, in my opinion, than a salesperson question. And I say that because if you are inserting scarcity or talking about scarcity when there isn't scarcity as a salesperson, you are lying. And I don't like lying. I don't like actual dishonesty. Framing the offer as time sensitive when historically you would have another time sensitive offer coming up afterwards, that's a normal practice that happens all the time. But if you're the salesperson and you're saying there's only 2 left and there aren't, that's not usually great. You want to make sure you're honest. But again, let's just say you have some aspect of some sway on this, or there genuinely is scarcity. How do you utilize it? One of the most powerful things, this came from Robert Cialdini's Influence, the book, was the example of scarcity of an item and then the scarcity of information about scarcity of that item. So what does that look like? If I'm selling a certain number of pieces of paper, let's say I'm selling some this piece of paper. I'm like, hey, there's only 3 of these left. I've got 4 other appointments today. No one else knows there's only 3 left. Right? So it's a scarcity of the item and a scarcity of information about the item. I'm not telling you to lie as the salesperson if that's not true, but be aware one of the most powerful things is doubling down on a tactic, and scarcity of product and scarcity of information about product inspires urgency very effectively. That's a psychological trigger there. All right. And then it looks like the last question is, what are some common mistakes salespeople make when trying to create urgency, and how can I avoid them? The single most common mistake salespeople make is what I addressed earlier, which is just lying, just being totally dishonest and trying to create truly false, fake urgency by making stuff up. And if you're in a scenario where there truly is no natural urgency, it means it is your responsibility to get good at asking questions about pain, not to lie about the scarcity or the whatever aspect you're going to lie about to create that urgency. So the most important thing you can do is stop lying, because chances are you might be doing an aspect of it or stretching the truth, right? Try to avoid that if you possibly can. I don't condone, or I certainly don't encourage at all saying stuff that is flat out untrue. Even when I give examples of coming up with third-party stories that theoretically I'm having to sort of make up a little bit, they're based off of other stories I've heard or that I know more or less to be true. Even if that exact same structure isn't perfectly applicable, the difference there is that I'm trying to help you understand how this can relate to you in the use of a third-party story, while an urgency is actually giving false information, right? There's a difference there, like false information versus helping you project yourself into someone else's situation. So try and avoid lying if you can. The next level of it is that understanding the emotional trajectory, that loss aversion, the avoidance of pain is what drives urgency. And in pursuit of gain, in pursuit of more money, in pursuit of more luxury, in pursuit of more comfort, instills value, but lacks urgency. So have the right emotional trajectory, meaning gain to pain to pen. The pen comes after the pain because that's the right way to get into urgency. Don't talk about their problems and then talk about how to fix it. Talk about what they want to do and then talk about their problems and to try and get them to take action. That's the right emotional trajectory to get someone to want to take action and take action with you now. I hope this has been helpful. I'm Ian Ross. This has been the Close More Sales Podcast.